Srera, how are you? Happy to have you. And
Hi, can you all
yeah,
hear me?
yeah, I'll leave you with Aura to get things happening. Thank you.
Hi, Sierra. We can hear you loud and clear.
Wonderful. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. Sierra, please, I know who you are, but I always like to ask a
So
question. How would you
just
like
to,
to be
just to interject
remembered?
a bit, sorry for that. Just to interject, if Shreyas manages to connect, may we have him going first because I know he has got a meeting he wants to rush to. So if he figures out to make everything work, then we just continue with the sequence we had. Thank you. All right,
Of course.
appreciate it. Appreciate your patience. Thank you.
No problem. Um, Sierra, how would you like to be remembered when someone leaves this round table? How would you like people to remember? There was a lady called Sierra who spoke, and she does this. What would you want that one thing to be?
Great question. I would say the one thing I hope folks will remember from our conversation and just connecting with me today is that I am somebody who is all about commercialization within quantum and future technologies. And by commercialization, research, roadmap, revenue. So that would be the one thing I'd love to land with this group today, building on the last conversation. The technology we're using right now, we're using a bunch of software and hardware products, right? That people we pay for these things, and they come from technology that comes from science. That has always been how commercialization works, and it's going to be very important with the complexity of quantum technologies and future compute to remember that's still how things work. Science is going to come from research. Technology and products are going to come from road mapping that. And ideally, because you are making things faster, cheaper, better possible, that's generating revenue and profits through companies. So I find that that kind of simplicity can really help center conversations around future compute, not just quantum, but exascale, edge, things that are happening with space and orbital data centers. All of those things are going to follow that science, technology, product, and hopefully profit roadmap.
Awesome. So let's okay. You have said so much already. Okay, let's talk about the quantum adjacent startup. The hardware race is a capital inferno. So what are the pick and shovel startups that will win in Africa? Like as much as they're unsexy but critical layers, post-quantum cryptography for the continent's fintech boom, quantum-ready data, preparation services, or specialized algorithm development for key African industries. So what is what is what will win? What is going to win in Africa?
I think that a great place to start when we think about what will win, not just within Africa, but within the world, because the thing to remember about quantum and these future technologies is that we're talking about humanity scale challenges, right? We're talking about things that what would take millions of years can take minutes. And that now we're talking about huge changes to what humanity can even discover for the people here in our lifetime. So with that in mind, I think it's really important to talk about how macro tech works, right? So at the foundation of tech, you have compute and infrastructure, right? You have network, you have hardware, you have data centers. And then on top of that, you have data and intelligence. And then on top of that, you have apps, agents, that sort of thing. That is important about what will win because what we're seeing right now with AI is that you have the intelligence layer and data trying to outrun the compute, right? So you're seeing a lot of people right now like, oh no, we are needing critical minerals, we are needing chips, we are needing cooling systems. Some of you may have noticed that 5 or 6 months ago, cooling systems for data centers and all of that stuff, water resource management was considered climate tech in the West, but now they realize they need it for data centers to run AI, right? So I say all that to say that what is going to bring immediate value and what people want to hear about is how can you make what I've already invested in safe, stable, and how can I make good on these huge bets I've made with AI? And there's going to be a few ways you can do that with quantum, right? One thing that we are seeing that's one of those kind of picks and shovels sort of thing that lives at the algorithm machine learning level is around AI simulation and that sort of technology for parameter tuning. So can you lower the cost to serve? Can you lower the cost of care and feeding for AI? With AI being somewhat deterministic with these prompts, with language models, what can quantum simulate to help tighten up those models? So that's one thing that we're seeing that could be one of those things help hedge these bets and open up the door for further quantum tech. But it looks like our other speaker is ready to go, so I'm happy to hand it over to him and we can
Awesome.
resume this.
Fantastic.
No,
Thank
you
you.
can just hand over, talk, and let's go. You can
Oh,
finish
okay,
that
okay,
one.
keep going.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Were you done with your thought?
Yeah, so that's one sort of example about what will win in the near term. Obviously, I think the longer term, we have to start thinking about that tech stack. We have to innovate up, down, and across it. So, for example, with quantum technologies, you can have highly precise data and all the sensors, but that becomes dark data if you don't have high performance compute. And then when you think about devices that can handle this sort of thing with quantum information science and algorithms and annealing, if you want to do that at scale, you're going to need to start thinking about devices and edge compute. So I think those are the things that really think about convergence and also start with a problem people actually want to solve, a problem people actually have, and not be a solution looking for a problem. Not lead with the tech, but lead with the value.
Amazing. I'm getting a few questions to say you didn't actually introduce yourself. So would you mind introducing yourself? Like they're like, this is great, but like, who are you? So would you mind introducing yourself?
Yes, my name is Clouse. I'm a founding partner at Barklow Venture Studio. We are part of the Qubits Ventures family. For all you folks who might know Nardo, Manaloto, and the Qubits folks, we are part of their Fund 2 strategy to commercialize future compute and future intelligence through a series of venture studios around the world. And so we're focused here in the Pacific Northwest. I'm former Microsoft, Xbox, EY, Cardinal Health, all of that good stuff. Just in a blockchain startup doing global ecosystem. And so yeah, that is what we do. So all that stuff I just shared with you, we've been running a lot of events and activations here in the Pacific Northwest to get people familiar with future compute and future intelligence. We also do pilot as a service, R&D as a service, and diligence as a service. Because what we're learning is that, especially where we are, people have been so focused on SaaS, software as a service, and those sorts of solutions, that their thesis from an investment perspective, from an advisory pilot testbed perspective, they haven't really thought about what they're calling deep tech right now. So those are all some of the things that we do here in the Pacific Northwest and more broadly to educate investors, policymakers, work with academia, technology transfer offices, that sort of thing.
I love that. I love the fact that you actually started with unpacking the first question, because I think your answer kind of spoke for itself as to who you are, but essentially you're a superwoman, so that's great. So let's talk about the pitch that gets funded. How does an African founder pitch a quantum startup to a skeptical VC who wants like a 3-year path to revenue? Like, what is the unfair advantage? You know, is it access to unique local data sets, a lower burn rate? Like, how do you get funded by someone who's like, okay, you're from Africa, what have you got?
Well, I think it's a great question. I think first, you have to kind of tap into that idea of the coalition of the willing and what's in it for me, right? So this is why I say lead with value and not tech. Because sometimes when you lead with the tech, you immediately lose people. As soon as you say quantum, people are thinking of the chip, the computer, Q-Day. I don't do deep tech. That's out of thesis for me. But if you, for example, were to start with this idea of like, hey, I noticed that there's all of this like data, to your point about data, right? Data is still very valuable, right? I noticed that you are interested in digital twins. Or I noticed that like you kind of have an investment thesis and whatever, and you happen to have the solution that's like, hey, we want to use a new kind of algorithm to mine this data. Or we want to use a new kind of compute architecture to secure this data confidentially in a way that you can have sovereign solutions, right? So now, like, you may be talking about some very advanced, blind, confidential compute architecture. You might be talking about quantum annealing or algorithms, but you framed it in a way where people care, because it's not just what can it do, but what can it do for me? A lot of you are probably seeing the news right now about IBM and their big HBSC like breakthrough around the bond markets, right? That's a great example. The people in the financial sector, the Wall Street folks, the Goldman folks who are getting that news today, they wrote off IBM and quantum computing, and they'll say, like, we'll look at the stock price. But when here comes a financial institution saying, like, here's what this thing did, but here's what it did for me in partnership with IBM, this is where you move from use case to case study. So I would say the unfair advantage would be, can you speak to value? Can you speak to case study in a way that transcends where you're located, in a way that kind of transcends the skepticism that people might hear as soon as they kind of register that you're talking about quantum.
Wow. I hope you caught that. I hope the chat caught that. I want to actually pull in Shreya. So Shreya, we're turning this into a panel because we're dynamic. Because I think I think this is a perfect time to actually throw you in. Sierra, I hope you don't mind, but you're now part of a panel discussion. So maybe before I get you to respond, if you don't mind introducing yourself so people know who you are, and then maybe give your first thoughts on what Sierra has just said.
I love it. First, am I audible now?
Very.
Yes. Okay. This is one of those few things that used to happen during the COVID era, where you'd kind of test the "Can you hear me now?" conversation. All right. So just a brief introduction about myself. My name is Shreyas. I've been at Accenture for the past 18 years, and I would say a little over a decade, say close to a decade and a half or so. I've been focusing on quantum tech, off of which the decade has been purely building a group within Accenture to help start something that is very business centric. And as a consequence, through that, our CTOs like Shreyas, not only are you going to get yourself re-educated because your comp sci and physics is insufficient, not because of that, but rather just get yourself re-educated to see how you can tune the language of what researchers are saying today into what businesses can adopt for today and tomorrow. And through that, MIT was gracious enough to offer a series of programs for me, and I was, greatly indebted to them. And from all the things that we learned, we continue to collaborate with MIT, and I think you would have seen a few papers released through MIT and the Quantum Economic Calculator as well through Future Tech. In addition, over the past 3 years or so, we've been focusing and helping build the quantum economy network through the World Economic Forum. And thankfully, that's how I got a chance to meet Farai over here. And so very grateful to have met him. And over the course of this period and also teaching at a few universities, we've grown to start thinking, the quantum isn't a lab purchase. It's a value path. So when Sierra mentioned that, I can only echo what she says. And she's the most eloquent speaker that I've come across in a very short amount of time to have articulated this. So there's nothing more to add on that one. There's obviously nuances to, you can do optimizations that you can run today, and you could definitely jump into the whole steal now, decrypt later. More cautious people would call it harvest now, decrypt later. And apply certain techs behind the scenes, classical algorithms to protect yourself, with further enabling it through a more quantum enabled infrastructure behind the scenes. And our group, with double digit people that we have, high double digit people that we have within the immediate payroll and the entirety of Accenture, which if you see the most recent earnings statement yesterday from Julie Sweet, it was close to 71,000 to 77,000 data and AI people across an 800,000 group company that is Accenture. So there's quite a lot to talk about, and always, keep in mind, I'm going to reiterate this thing. It's a quantum business stance first, business outcomes first, being technology agnostic and security by design. That's just a quick opener, I would say.
Okay. So, am I still on? Okay. Can you hear me? Okay, it's just test that. I feel like that's going to be the theme for today. Can you hear me now? Can you hear us at AQC? So my question then to you is, let's talk about the day one use case. So let's forget 10-year roadmaps. Like, what's the single most compelling quantum-inspired optimization problem an African enterprise can tackle this year using currently available classical or hybrid methods? And if you could give us like some kind of a concrete example, and maybe like the expected 5 to 10% efficiency gain that makes it like a no-brainer.
I'd love to. And what I can share is a couple of examples, right? So we did a piece of work for vertical farming. I think vertical farming is a very important topic for Africa in general. Imagine having an enclosed ecosystem that grows anything and everything you want. Yes, it is power hungry, but can it be optimized? Now, the simple optimization task that goes behind it could be run in with the philosophy, with the mindset of having a quantum-inspired algorithm behind the scenes, but keeping in mind that when we talk about quantum-inspired, it's a classical processor that runs through the stuff, that includes GPU, CPU combinations. You could formulate such a problem as a PUBO or a QUBO or a mixed integer problem that can be solved using quantum inspired heuristics or other techniques like LNS, taboo, grasp, you name it, on the cloud that is readily available. And from my understanding, all the hyperscalers are fully engaged in Africa, and so everybody should be able to tap into that. Some of the instances in the scenario over here, you do have the potential to see that 5 to 8% gain that you're alluding to in terms of minimizing, say, the level of water content or the electricity usage that you're going to have per square foot of whatever that you're trying to output behind the scenes, or in terms of growth of the number of produce that you want to create behind the scenes. All of those things are definitely in play. I mean, that is to me, that's a very important use case, as I think in order to live, you need sustenance. And in order to have sustenance in a closed environment is going to be very important, especially in countries where it's not in abundance.
Sierra, would you like to jump in on that? You're on mute.
Yeah, I
Still
think along with that, I'm still on mute.
No, you're good now.
Okay. Yeah, I would say along with that, this whole AIQ, like AI, artificial intelligence, quantum thing, annealing algorithm, that sort of thing. I mean, I think about, so my background originally was in supply chain and logistics, right? And you think about optimization, but when you think about, I kind of think about this idea of like next gen forecasting, right? More broadly. So there's definitely vertical farming, but like, let's zoom out. There are so many things that need some form of projection that we now can, with AI and quantum, not just project, but we can actually add even a confidence interval to it, right? We can add these more dynamic if-thens because quantum by nature in this way is kind of more exploratory than deterministic. I remember like being in school for supply chain optimization type stuff, and this was like very support vector machine learning, like all the way back before you could get all these variables for a proper quantum simulation. And it was the kind of thing like, where do you locate a warehouse to have this reach of customers, to have this delivery time, to reduce spoilage, right? And we had that like in the late 90s, right? And when you think about now, you think about like tools like SAP HANA, you think about big data Hadoop, you think about all of these huge data reservoirs and how a lot of that data has not been mined, and how that's kind of right there for us to have these sort of what I'll call like these next gen projection tools. That's something that I see across the board. I talk to businesses right now, and they're trying to plan everything from headcount to inventory to insurance to tariffs all around like this next 2 years, right? And so being able to take what is currently enterprise resource planning data and these more specific types of data and being able to have almost like this enhanced AI quantum game theory around that with these parameters, I think that that's something that can show some immediate value. I would even say that that's the kind of stuff where you get some of these redacted data sets. You could even do that in a quantathon kind of event if you wanted to with Qiskit and all that good stuff.
Absolutely, Sierra. I agree on that one. And I think this is something that's pretty almost nearly close to me as well. In the Pan-African, there's a Pan-African operator, right? And they run close to about 400 to about 1,000 trucks across the corridors like Lagos, Abidjan, or Gauteng, KZN. And the idea is that you've got to optimize on the time windows deliveries, axle limits, rolls, the different tolls, driver hours, cross dock, umpteen different things, right? Imagine the same thing that I talked about the vertical farming. Now, let me just kind of do this very back of the hand, back of the envelope calculation. If you have like 800 trucks going 250 kilometers a day, and I'm assuming it's 90 cents per kilometer, I mean, converting it to US dollars, whatever, I might be wrong. If I just have 5% fewer kilometers, you're essentially saving $9,000 per day. And if you expand that out to about 90 days, that's 810,000, right? And that, what you can say is, if I do a day one use case with just something like this, the ship value could be potentially done within 12 to say 14 weeks. This 90-day savings can fund the next 2 use cases, is how I look at it, right? Let's solve this immediate problem, but I do want to emphasize that we're talking about these day one, very quick problems, but I don't want to lose the intangible effects that comes out of it, right? So if I were to use a device like a Quantinuum device or in an IBM Quantum device, any one of these two different people, these two different types of systems, you could potentially, I think, to my recollections, you don't need a super dilution refrigerator for a trapped ion or a neutral atom. You could potentially run those problems to obtain your intangible benefits today, right? It's not like it's going to fund the next 2 use cases in the next 90 days, but it is effectively invaluable to do those experiments today with a business mindset, not just that I have a big golden hammer, but you're doing this with that business mindset, and I think you can do great with that.
I want to switch to the gallery because it's alive. So I'm not even going to say much on that. There's a question. There's a question coming from, I think it's Rossi. I hope I said that correctly. I'm sorry if I didn't. But the question is, how do you then evaluate value? Value to whom and for what purpose? And does identifying and providing value here come at a cost to another value there? And then there's, an addendum to that to say there are real questions, philosophical case study questions even. Are we equipping our youth to handle these higher order levels of thinking about the potential ramifications of their work? In other words, what are potential blind spots for folks who work deeply and or exclusively in the field, and how to account for the risks that emerge when identifying value from perhaps a limited vantage point? I don't know who wants to take that for Sierra. I think that one was for you first, and then Shreyas.
Yeah, I think this is an excellent question, and this is kind of at the heart of what we do as a venture studio, from this commercialization, from research to roadmap to revenue. Like that, like these are the questions, right? I think one thing to start with is the business mind. Let's just kind of get into a business mindset. The business mind says every person is a customer. They just might not be your customer, right? So, meaning that the world is full of problems. The world is full of desires. The world is full of needs and wants, and they live inside of people. So the thing is, when you have this kind of customer centricity, and I come from a background where that is it's all about customer centricity, that's where you start, right? So when you start from research and science, and I think this is honestly why a lot of quantum tech conversations really struggle here in the US, especially with investors, et cetera, is because science is never done. Let's be very clear. Science is never done. We will be looking at science. You will be in the field. You will be doing research. And the thing is, when you set the bar at the Nobel, when you set the bar at peer review, when you set the bar at CERN and dark matter and particle accelerators, there's all kinds of things that in our lifetime, humanity, we will always need to figure out. But there will be a subset of what some researchers will call failures that everyday people are like, hey, that could help me, right? Like there's all those stories about NASA here in the US where it's like, hey, they failed to find a coolant to go on the outside of an orbital craft that wouldn't burn up on reentry, but we got the cooling gel inside of diapers, right? And so I bring that up because I think that this is a really important question about how are we thinking about these things. If you think of things in terms of science, it's continual. It's never fully solved. You never really find a customer through science, right? But when you start thinking in terms of applied science, that's engineering, and then you start thinking engineering in terms of those products, you could think of it that way. But the better way to think about it is look at all the problems in the world, right? And then you can start quantifying and qualifying who has that problem. So I guess the short answer would be evaluate value. Who has this problem? How big is this problem? How often do they have this problem? How much will they pay to fix this problem? Or for this desire, for this need, for this want or this advantage, what are people willing to pay? And can you deliver it to them with the ways, means, and technology that you've learned from science in the products you've made from it. So I know that's a long-winded answer, but I wanted to kind of walk through the thinking process because I can't answer the question about equipping youth, but the thought process I just laid out, I think that's the much better way to think about it. When you go right into the field for technical and experience and professional credential reasons, you have to focus on that. But then you lose focus on the customer. Then you lose focus on people. And I'm telling you, people are full of problems. They're full of needs and wants.
Shreyas, do you agree?
I cannot disagree. This is perfect. There's no holes in what she's saying. We are bounded by value. I'm going to turn a bounded by value in loss of potential, loss of that said value today, right? I want to talk about also through that same lens of capturing value is securing the value, right? So the easiest thing is de-risk the first security project, right? Like let's just hypothesize, right? Let's talk about a starter pack, right? Something, a barrier to entry less than $100,000. Play along with me. A less than $100,000, your key that you're going to talk about is the steal now, decrypt later. It's a genuine business risk, right? Today, if you want to remain your information confidential with the speed at which these quantum computers can do something, can truly do some damage, you got to move PQC first, right? Like you got to go get that stuff out of the way. Like do 3 to 4 weeks. Try to figure out, map out where your RSAs, your ECC lives, your TLS APIs, data sets, all of that stuff. Provide that crypto bill of materials, your CBOM. 3 to 4 weeks. You're not going to spend a lot of time in that. Think about 20 to 30K, right? Then let's talk about like some kind of a hybrid TLS where, like, say you have something like a QSecure or something that comes in and says, here, we're going to enable this key exchange signatures that's PQC, that's classical on one of these external surfaces for a customer mobile or an API gateway for finance, whatever you want to talk about, right? Just single instance. You then build that agility guardrails behind the scenes. Spend about 2 weeks on that. The hybrid TLS spend about 4 to 6 weeks. You're talking about 2.5 months. Walk away with something that is less than $100,000. And oh, by the way, also think about potential training and in external validations that you want to tap onto that. So when you've got some of these things set in place, you're walking away with a starter pack. Entry is less than $100,000. It's not a lot of money to secure millions and billions of dollars of data that you have. You're talking about active distribution of the various different applications that you can secure. Then consider things like QKD or entanglement-based networks that you might have behind the scenes where you have to lay a protected metro fiber line within your DC or in inter DC that you have, and so on and so forth. So you can always think of that later, and we can talk about the 12-month, 90, 6 months, 12-month plan afterwards.
Thank you for that. I can't believe we're running out of time. I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. I want to ask one more question, but then I'm also realizing we've got like 3 minutes left. So I don't know if we can speed through or rather try and compress our responses for this last question. And then I want to, in the spirit of AQC, close with a statement from the gallery. So essentially, this is also part of your closing remarks. Is that cool with you? Our impromptu panel? Okay, so it's clear to understand that capital and code just aren't enough if founders can't sell what people don't understand. Beyond an angel syndicate or a cloud credit pool, what is the most catalytic action to prime the market? Sierra.
I'll go first. So I'm not sure if many of you heard about ProSci. I'm a ProSci certified change manager. I'm ad-carring people. I'm pro-sciing people, whether they realize it all the time. And I think that's the answer, right? It's the idea of awareness, that desire, but we really have to make this more accessible to folks. I'll give just a quick sort of thing that I'm working on for AI Week that I'm speaking at here in Seattle. Maybe you guys have heard of the STAR technique for interviews, where you talk about situation, task, action, result. I'm a firm believer in the STAR technique for when we talk about innovation in these statements. So the statement that we can use these quantum algorithms and all of that to reduce costs, increase speed, et cetera, right? Transparency. Where are you getting that from? Right? I shared the Q case studies. There's data, Accenture, so many people have published paper. Be transparent. Make it accessible. Tell people, here's where you can do your own research on this. Don't take it from me. Ask GPT, go online. And then the final R is readiness. Talk about whatever you're talking about. When will that be ready for somebody to buy, use, or invest in? So that's how I'd say it is. We need to start structuring things when we talk about innovation, something people aren't used to. I'll put it here in the chat. Statement, transparency on where you're getting that from, make it accessible for people to do their own research, and talk about the readiness in terms of when will I see it, when can I buy it, and just be upfront about it.
Shreyas?
All right, let me leave you with this one. Quantum isn't, like I said, is it in a science project waiting for tomorrow's hardware, right? It's something that you can start doing today. As we said, day one, do the very bare minimum simple that's kind of classical, but you're working towards a quantum philosophy. Be very pragmatic about what it is that you can achieve. Don't overcommit to solving the 5 to 10% reduction right off the bat. Consider yourself also saving for the future. Be pragmatic from a PQC pilot standpoint and de-risk the whole steal now, decrypt later without breaking the budget, right? So think about the $100,000 project that you can kind of walk in and out. And my role could be very simple, right? We can coach 3 to 5 people to be very business-led pod, wire it into your data and your cloud tracks or AI track that you would have, get the necessary KPIs for whatever P&L that you need to build out. There's one thing about us is there's absolutely no hype, no labs. You don't need just outcomes, right? You can do the whole thing behind the scenes for that, which is no hype, which is security by design. Roadmap your control, get yourself into the 12-week, you're not quantum curious anymore, you're more quantum capable. Walk away with one problem, one KPI, one site or a corridor that you want to work with. Nominate a product owner, someone like 2 to 3 people who are going to help lead the co-pilot. No pun intended from ChatGPT comment before. Greenlight the sub 100K project, whether it's a PQC one or if it's an optimization problem, and get started. It's always the first step that is the hardest, right? No matter what you do, you plan a vacation, you're always going to be planning that one vacation until you book the flight. Right? You've got to whip out the credit card and book that flight, because until then it's, hey, I'm going to go on a safari. I'm going to go see the water. It's always talk. Get the 3 to 5 people, get the small budget approved, start moving this thing forward, because until then, the rest of the team will not come in. It'll just continue to be a lot of noise behind the scenes.
Epic. What an epic way to end this panel. Sierra, you wanted to add something? Sprinkle a little salt in there? No? I thought your mic came on.
No, I'm just typing what I had shared in the chat here.
Awesome. Thank you. So, in the spirit of AQC, I'm going to close with a comment from the chat.
Ooh, I love Nelson Mandela's quote, by the way. I'm sorry. I'm reading The Long Walk to Freedom, and that is the one quote that always sticks to me. It always seems impossible until it's done.
Yes, that is epic. And that's from Pumzile. Thank you for throwing that in there, Pumzile. That is awesome. So I hope your chat, because as you can see, I will actually be sharing your thoughts, because what you say matters. So chat, please activate. I see you. Oh, I lost it. Where did it go? Okay, I think this is it. So we'll come in again from, I think it's Yusuf. I genuinely cannot express how much I agree with these statements. Quantum technology does not require highly, oh no, sorry. A new message came in and I lost my There it is. Okay. Quantum technology does not require a highly advanced billion-dollar company. This is what I meant earlier by innovation. Africa has an opportunity to do what Taiwan did with semiconductors. If we are to genuinely foster an environment that harnesses quantum education, we can collectively tackle the biggest problem of quantum tech, most of which money does not solve. An example, open quantum systems or dissipative-based QC that harnesses entanglement to their advantage. The problem isn't money, the problem is the scientific background and the risk. These are not expensive to build, but rather too hard to tackle, that it is easier to spend billions than spend the resources, human resources needed to realize them. And this is the exact resource that we have. So I think it still builds on what has been said. And I'm really, really grateful. Thank you for being so flexible and allowing us to turn this into a panel discussion. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.